Snowboard flex can be one of the most important factors to determine how a board will ride. But there's no industry standard when it comes to measuring flex. That's why I'm going to be explaining everything you need to know regarding snowboard flex so you can find the perfect board. Now, a snowboard really has two flexes. It has a torsional stiffness, which runs from edge to edge, and this is what you feel when you're foot steering a board. Different components in the build of a snowboard, like highlighted stringers and different layers of fiberglass, will change the torsional stiffness. But there's never really a measurement for it, and it's not something you can feel without riding the board. Generally, when people are talking about snowboard flex, they are referring to the tip to tail flex that runs the length of the snowboard. With this, you have two types of flexes. You have a twin flex, which is even on the tail and the nose, and you have a directional flex, which might be softer in the nose and stiffer towards the tail of the board. You'll mainly see a directional flex in directional shaped snowboards meant for all mountain freeriding. Now, when you're looking at a spec sheet of a snowboard, you'll usually see a flex rating ranging from 1 to 10 on how stiff a board is. But there's a couple issues with this. The main one being is that there is no standard across brands for how flex is measured. That means if you're looking at a Burton board that has a 7 out of 10 flex compared to a Capita board that has a 7 out of 10 flex, that does not mean they have the same exact flex necessarily. In addition to this, even within a given brand, the ranking out of 10 they give is not always on the money. From most brands, soft flexing boards never really fall below a 5 or 4, and stiff boards never really get into that 9 or 10 range. This is because there's no such tool to measure and quantify the flex of a snowboard like there is for other measurements like side cut, nose width, waist width, and overall length of a snowboard. The 1 to 10 flex rating scale can help you with where a brand sees a particular board in their line, but let's get into how you can determine a snowboard's flex before getting it on snow. But first, a few ways not to feel the flex of a snowboard. All of these, by the way, are things I have seen customers do when checking snowboards out themselves. Do not hold the nose and shake the board. This will not give you any indication on how the flex of the board will feel. Do not use your knee to try and feel the flex of the snowboard. This again will give you no indication on how the board will feel. Do not flip the board upside down and flex it by its base. This is not how a snowboard will flex in on-snow conditions. Do not use your fingertips to lightly press into the board. This will not show you much on how the snowboard will feel. What you'll want to do instead is get a good grip around the board with your forearm around the nose, placing your other hand in the middle of the board and giving it a good strong flex. Rather than holding the board vertical when you're flexing it, hold it at an angle so you feel more of the flex in the body of the board. Otherwise, you may only feel the flex of the tail, which will not be a good indication of how the entire board flexes. One important thing to keep in mind is that a positive camber board will have a stiffer flex than a rockered or hybrid cambered snowboard. For example, if you had a snowboard model that came in two options, like the Burton Custom, which comes in positive camber, and Flying V, or hybrid camber, the cambered snowboard will be stiffer than the Flying V snowboard. That's because when you flex a cambered snowboard, you are pushing away from the natural shape of the board. And this is what makes camber a more snappier ride than any other profile. In a board that contains rocker in the profile, you are pushing with the natural shape of the camber profile in that snowboard, which is why they end up having softer flexes. When it comes down to it, snowboard flex is all about preference. If your skills are high enough, you can ride any snowboard flex to suit your riding style. But here's what you can expect in the ride out of the different levels in flex of a snowboard. A softer flexing snowboard will be more maneuverable and is therefore better suited for beginners. You can make the board do what you want without it fighting back too much. That helps it to be a more forgiving ride. Obviously, a softer flexing board is going to be better for buttering, as you can more easily press the snowboard and hold it while you're riding. This is another reason some rail riders prefer softer flexing boards too, regardless of their ability level. And this does give more of a skatey feel, similar to having loose trucks on a skateboard. But because of the nature of this, a softer board will be less stable at higher speeds. Because you can think of this as being a little looser of a ride, it might get squirrely and feel a little out of control when you get up to higher speeds. Now, a medium flexing snowboard is ideal for most riders. It still does what you want without being too much for most riders, but it has a little more response a little more snap, and gives an overall more energetic ride than a softer flexing snowboard. You can think of this as being a little more versatile, as medium flexing boards are still fine to butter with, but they'll handle better for bigger mountain riding and higher speeds. Moving towards the stiffer snowboards, you'll find more responsive rides. This means these boards can react quicker with your body movement, but sometimes it may take more energy to initiate the board. Stiffer boards usually handle best at higher speeds, which is why they're usually used for bigger mountain riding. But you'll see this is the least forgiving ride, and a reason why this is not for beginners, but more advanced level riding. It takes more muscle and energy to use these boards, but that board delivers that energy right back. Personally, I ride boards that are in the medium to stiff range that tend more towards the stiff side. So if medium was a 5 and the stiffest board was a 10, I like riding about an 8. I feel like these boards have the best snap for me in the park, while also being reliable when I'm charging at top speeds. One of my favorite boards in this flex range is the Capita Black Snowboard of Death. I've got a bunch of videos on this board, but check this one out on one of my first days riding it, and it was a blast. Thanks for watching, and until next time, we'll see you somewhere on the mountain. Peace.